This is Alan from West 3D. It is my pleasure to have a conversation with Ted Tahquechi. He is an artist that I met at the last Rocky Mountain Rep Rap Festival, and we talked about his work and some of the interesting things that he's doing. And it's I just wanted to talk with him more about it. So, Ted, it's great to be talking with you again.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we've chatted quite a bit. Why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of your background and what you're doing?
Sure, I'll start way back because it kind of speaks to where I'm at now. I worked in the video games industry for about 20 years. I worked for Atari, Accolade, and Mattel Toys. I was kind of responsible for the entire development of a game. I have 35 titles that are shipped to market. And at the height of my career, I got into a car accident, and everything that was where it wasn't supposed to be ended up where it is. And that basically means that everything that shifted in one of my eyes and ended up with no vision in this side and about 5% remaining vision in this side. Um, so I'm a guide dog user. I'm almost completely blind, and I'm a photographer. Believe it or not, after the accident, I went back to school, finished a degree in fine art photography and studio art photography, and that's where I am today.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I'll pull up some examples of your work, but your work is gorgeous.
Thank you.
It's real. I love landscape photography. You also do other kinds of photography as well.
I do. I use I use the camera to kind of see the world around me, and I think that's one of the big things that got me back into photography after the car accident is that because I have no distance vision and really no clarity in my vision, I use the camera to take pictures of the things that are going on around me and load them onto the computer later and kind of blow them up in Lightroom or in Photoshop so that I can see kind of what I've been missing. So that's probably what got me back into it. And then I just started doing more kind of artistic stuff. And since I was very young and was gifted a Polaroid camera by my parents, always loved taking landscape photos. I remember my sister taking me to Yosemite, and that was like one of the first places that I fell in love with. I mean, I'm not going to call back to Ansel Adams or anything, but it's a gorgeous place, and taking pictures there is kind of what really sunk the hook in for me for the love of visual art. And even though I really can't see it today, I can still see a little bit of color. I can definitely see hues of light. So I have light perception and the ability to kind of really see highlights and shadows, and that's very much where my work resides today is in the light.
Yeah, and you're taking your work into a totally different direction, which is what really caught my attention and why, we've had some follow-up conversations. So why don't you talk about the project that you're working on now?
The project that I have right now is called the Landscapes of the Body, and it's you can check out bodyscapes.photography for the full portfolio and information about it. But basically, it's a inclusive body of work that is abstract black and white photos, and I'm sure you can bring some up on screen. And it kind of came out of my love of working with people, but not being able to see people's faces. So I can't tell when somebody's smiling or when they're frowning or when their eyes are closed, but I still liked the interactivity of working with people. So I started initially taking pictures of like people's hands and like working hands and playing hands, praying hands and that kind of stuff. And it eventually led into doing kind of the full body and different pieces from all over the range of the body and lighting it kind of in a fine art way. So a lot of them are what's considered low key photography. So that means that they're predominantly black, and that is kind of reflective of my eyesight. When I look at something, most of the things that I see is black. So this is kind of representative of how I see the world. But it's an inclusive body of work. It includes models that range from 19 to 76. And a whole bunch of different genders are represented. We have people with physical disabilities. We have, so many different body sizes, plus size, all the way down to petite, and all of the bodies are still beautiful in this particular light. So I started that in 2013, and we worked on it for 10 years, and we were, it's been shown in a whole bunch of different places. It just finished a couple of years at Lighthouse for the Blind Gallery in San Francisco, and it's been very well received. As far as the collection of work goes, I should also mention it's not explicit, so like all the naughty bits have been removed. It actually, in the name of Landscapes of the Body, also is kind of a reference to removing all the landscapes that you, or the landmarks of a body that you would normally see. So like most of the time you don't see belly buttons, or you don't see, anything that you would recognize. And that's kind of what brings that cool abstractness to it when you look at the images. So we worked for about 10 years on this project. And then we were invited to work with the Andy Warhol Foundation for Visual Art and Red Line Contemporary Art Center of Denver. And they funded the expansion of this project for accessibility. Previously, we had a couple of tactile prints that we hung with the work, and they were done on metal plate. And they had the company that we worked with, which is a local company here in Colorado, would layer ink so that the metal, or so that the picture would become embossed on the ink. They're really cool, but they were all hand tooled and they were all really expensive. So we wanted to work with 3D printers to be able to bring kind of tactile art to the next level and allow us to kind of be part of all of the aspects of creating the tactile prints, so that I like to be able to edit my photos, but I also would like to be able to do the 3D prints. So that's kind of what we ended up with. So thank you to the Warhol Foundation and Redline Contemporary Art Center. We were able to purchase the materials and take the time to develop a process that allows us to extract the texture from a picture and do multiple layers within a printed tactile image for people who are blind and visually impaired, so that they can appreciate the artwork, or any artwork, really.
So yeah, can you talk a little bit more? I know that you're still working on the process and there's some stuff going on, but can you explain a little bit more about, in I guess a general way, how that works?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a process that's done in Photoshop, and like I said, we're using Photoshop to extract the texture within the image and then put it into layers so that we can adjust it up to 8 different layers. And I can show an example. You can actually just show an example on screen of the image. And what it allows you to do is take that and print that so that you can have it up to 4 millimeters high, so that from the base of the actual piece. And then that image is presented with a traditional photographic image that's framed, as well as the tactile version and a QR code that we've done that's also tactile and has an RFID chip in it. So when somebody who is blind or visually impaired that wants to experience the tactile version of the art, you can either tap your phone against it or just scan the QR code, and it'll give you an audio description of the piece and kind of walk you through what you're going to see as you're tactily exploring the image.
It's really, really great. We had talked about how in some ways it's a process that's kind of similar to what's being done with UForge, that kind of layering of filament.
Yeah, we actually use HueForge as kind of the final part of the project. But one of the biggest things is, like, if you just take an image and put it into HueForge, it'll print it out and it'll look amazing. HueForge is such an amazing program for, if you're just doing the colored lithographs, or if you're doing their new color aware stuff is really amazing. But it's more for what it looks like, not what it feels like. And when you go, if you take a picture of, I don't know, like a tree on a rock, and put it in there, you're going to have all that background, and you're going to have the sky, and you're going to have whatever's in the foreground, and probably, some grass or whatever's around your area. And when somebody goes to touch it, it feels kind of the equivalent to static. So it's just, there's not a lot of defined subject matter in the image. And what our process allows us to do is kind of like a photographic process of dodging and burning, where you can kind of push and pull the aspects of the textured image up and down in the picture like you would a fine art print. And that's kind of really the way that we're approaching these tactile prints, is rather than just having, something that originally has, up until now, has kind of been fairly simplistic. Like if you're looking for tactile art on a computer screen, most of the time they have like a 60 by 40 tactile display that you can touch, and it'll pop up these little dots on the display so you can touch it. So there's not a lot of like resolution, and it feels kind of it feels kind of simple. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of problem with the technology where we're at right now, is that you either have the lower resolution computer monitors that are similar to Braille displays, or you have to go into like painting and do layers and layers and layers of painting onto a canvas, so that you start to get the lifted pieces that you want to be the person to be able to feel, so that it feels embossed, right? Yeah. And then you have to do, Krylon to make sure that it's safe for touching and all that kind of stuff. But the physical work of having to create a tactile print up till now has been very work intensive. Right now, with the process that we've created, that once you have them processed, you can print them off it takes about 2 hours to print. But you can do that, and it can be something a lot more like what Andy Warhol, our benefactor, wanted, which was to make art accessible to everybody. And that's kind of been our credo since we started this.
Yeah, and what has the response been from the visually impaired community?
We're actually working with the National Federation of the Blind, the Boulder Group, and I'm a member as well. But we've also worked with several other groups of people who are completely blind and partially sighted, and they've been very receptive to it. The Boulder Group has been very much involved in kind of our evolution of this process, and how things feel, how they are represented in the real world. And the problem is that there really hasn't been a lot of examples of this kind of work, except for, like I said, with the canvas work, like if you're doing paintings and that sort of stuff. So a lot of them were really blown away, and a lot of them were really shocked about, what they were able to feel and how they were able to experience it. And we're actually moving on from the work that we showed previously, from the body work, into doing landscape work. And that's always kind of been our holy grail, is the landscape stuff, because abstract stuff, you can do it, and it's really cool. And that's what we're launching the project with. But from there, we have evolved it to a 2.0 version of the technology. And I'm sure you can put a version of the picture up now, but we're working with a company called Flight for Sight. And what they do is they offer travel incentives to people who are blind and visually impaired, or have cool projects for people who are blind and visually impaired. And we were the recipient of the one of 3 teams as the winners for the 2023 grant. And 2024 grant. And as an example, one of the teams is going to Ghana, and they're going to be participating in a whole bunch of activism for people who are blind and visually impaired, and they're going to be giving away a whole bunch of canes, because the white canes, because in Ghana there's not as much infrastructure for people who are blind or visually impaired or disabled in any way. You're kind of on your own, so they're going to support that and to kind of help that cause along and bring some social awareness to it. And that's what we're doing with the art, is that we're trying to make visual art accessible and trying to bring that into the forefront and trying to really show how important it is to make visual art accessible for everybody. So one of the things that we've done is gone to San Francisco as part of our travel grant, and you can bring up an image of that. First place we hit was the Golden Gate Bridge. And we've got an image of the Golden Gate Bridge, and we've got the bridge part itself is pulled up to the highest layer in the stack, and then as you go down, you've got the Presidio down below it, and some of the other aspects, and then down into the water in the sky. So it's all very much separated, so you can feel all the different parts of the actual bridge itself, which is really cool. And this is kind of a preview because this is a lot of people haven't seen this one. This one's kind of hot off the press, so it's
Nice.
pretty fun.
One of the things that really got my attention when we were talking in Loveland at the show was you were describing someone who I'm assuming had been blind from birth, experiencing one of your tactile works of a landscape scene. And I'll let you describe what it was, but it was one of those moments for me when it was like, yeah, if you have never seen things in nature, there's no way that words can really convey all of what that is, but the work that you're doing can help with that.
It's true, and I think I'll use the Golden Gate Bridge as a good example in that it's really one of those things. Like if you've been blind from birth, then you've gone through school and you've read history books and you know about things like places like the Golden Gate Bridge and other landmarks. I mean, Mount Rushmore and whatever else. But unless you've actually been able to have somebody physically give you something that you can feel, you don't really know what it is. I mean, audio descriptions are amazing, and you can have these very verbose descriptions of the Golden Gate Bridge. But when you talk about somebody or when you talk about the Golden Gate Bridge, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about that it's a orangish reddish bridge, right? And it's very large. It's over a mile long, and you're going to talk about that it's going over the San Francisco Bay, and that there's the Presidio down below it, and a lot of times it's kind of covered in fog. What else are you going to get besides that, right? In a general audio description, um, it doesn't give you as much connection to what you're experiencing. The person that we were talking about, that one of the first things they did was touch an image of the Golden Gate Bridge, and they were crying because they had always heard about it, but they didn't have any connection to it. And all of a sudden, you've got this connection for somebody who has been blind from birth, and it's amazing. And I think that as a photographer or any artist, really, you want to have something, you want to create something that's going to bring an emotional response to somebody. And that's kind of always, I mean, we all create work for ourselves too, right? But we also like to show off what we've got, right? Or whatever it is. And if you can elicit an emotional response, you've done your job, right? And all of a sudden we've created something. The first time that we've created something that somebody touched and they were emotionally touched by it, I felt like we kind of had achieved our goal.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in a totally different lifetime and career. I worked in the audio industry and did some work with a band in France that I believe it was one of the band members' siblings uh, had been born deaf. So what they started doing at their concerts was handing out these inflatable batons that made it easier for people that were deaf or hard of hearing to feel the bass. I mean, obviously, if you've got tons of subwoofers, you're going to feel that right in your chest.
Yep.
But it was a very simple thing that they could do that was letting people experience art in a way that wasn't easy for them previously.
Well, it
And
allows you to feel the nuances, right? As
yeah,
opposed to just the heavy bass. All of a sudden, you've got a chamber that allows you to feel a lot more range than you could if you were just had the bass pounding in your chest, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, when I spoke with you about your work, it definitely kind of brought those memories back and was like, yeah, there are ways that this can be done. So, where is your work being shown now?
We're going to be actually making it's going to be making its debut at the National Federation for the Blind, the large national convention that's in Orlando, Florida, and that's 1st of July, July 3rd and 4th. It's going to be shown, and then it's going to take a break, and will be available in the Shine Music Festival. And that's going to be here in Colorado, which is really cool. And that'll be the first truly public display of it, which is really cool. And we're going to be showing it there. That's August the 24th. And then it'll be available at the National Federation for the Blind, the Colorado Convention. Those are the ones we currently have scheduled. There's a whole bunch more that are in the works in other states and that sort of stuff. And if anybody's interested in showing this work in their establishment, please let me know. Please feel free to either contact me via social media at Nedskee on Instagram or at my email. It's nedskee at my last name, TAHQUECHI.com. Definitely love to talk to anybody who's interested in showing this work. Because we really want to just get it in front of the general public. The main goal was to put it in front of the blind and visually impaired community because that is its demographic. But it definitely is something that can bring awareness for the general public.
Yeah. And aside from everything we've talked about with your photography, and you're now, developing this new technique to make photographs more accessible, you've also got a couple other projects that you're working on. Um, Tell us about Blind Travels.
Blind Travels is a website that's been around for quite a while. After I lost my sight, I made a diary of the things that I still like to travel, even though I couldn't see after the accident. And I was making this diary of important things in a hotel. So like when you walk into, because I travel so much and I couldn't keep everything straight. So whenever I walked into a hotel, if the check-in desk was on the right and like the pool was available, kind of down the hall and on the left, or whatever, like where the locations of the restaurants and that sort of stuff, all of the important amenities. I was making notes of these, and eventually it became Blind Travels, which was a resource for me, um, just so when I traveled someplace, I could kind of refer back to it and have my notes there. And then it morphed into this, kind of larger entity on its own, where we do destination reviews. We've reviewed so many of the national parks. We've been invited to come and work with so many people from the national parks Federation and or national parks organizations. But we've also done, a ton of different hotel reviews, and we talk about things like I said, where the check-in desk is and that kind of stuff, but also kind of the basic layout of most of the rooms so that you can kind of do your research and have the information before you walk into the door of the hotel. We also talk a lot about the things that are close by. So like when you exit like one of the big city ones, I'll use the Denver Courtyard Marriott down here on one of the main streets. Talking about when you exit the building, you can turn to the left and you can, find these restaurants and this coffee shop and that sort of stuff. Just so that the person who is blind or visually impaired has kind of an idea of what they're walking into when they go to a new place. And it really has helped a lot of people become more confident in solo travel. And, we've just worked with so many different properties to be able to help them understand how to work with blind and visually impaired guests, because unfortunately there's not a ton of us. There's a lot of times if you have a person that's in a wheelchair, mobility impaired, they have a very specific set of things that they need to be able to get into a room and to, the facilities and that sort of stuff. But for blind and visually impaired people, a lot of times it's not super evident that somebody is experiencing a vision problem or has a vision problem, unless they have a guide dog like me. Then it's not, outwardly apparent. So we try to help them to understand how to help a person who's blind or visually impaired. Like, rather than pointing and saying it's over there, you say, okay, from where you're standing to your left is blah, or the elevators are straight ahead of you and then to the right, or that sort of thing, to be more verbose about their explanations of things. And we've really tried to do a lot of like paying it forward. We don't charge for our services. We just do it because it's something that's important to do, and we've
Yeah.
worked with so many different restaurants and so many different properties to help them understand how to work with people who are blind and visually impaired. So it's definitely a labor of love for me.
Yeah, and it's definitely worthwhile, because I can only imagine, you know, you have a great guide dog, but she doesn't know where the restaurant is. If you walk into a hotel, I can't imagine you can tell her, like, take me to the front desk, you
Well,
know.
one thing that's really cool about guide dogs is once they've gone into a place, you can tell them to find outside, and they'll take
Mm,
you right back out. So like when we were at the festival and we met in Loveland, we were done at your booth. I told her find outside, so she kind of worked her way through all of those aisles and made it all the way to the front because that's what her job is. So
yeah.
a lot of times they can get you back where you came from, but they can't get you to where you're going unless you're understanding what you need to go, where you need to go, and how you need to get there. So
But with the work that you're doing, if I'm walking into this hotel and I need to turn right to go to the reception desk, then a guide dog can help guide you to navigate there.
very much.
But so the combination is really great. And talking about your guide dog, Fauna, who I was very, very happy to get to meet at the show. I was having a moment where I was really missing my dog, and getting to pet her while Carrie was holding her, um, because we don't touch guide dogs while they're working.
That's right.
Um, Tell us a little bit about what you've done with Fauna.
Yeah, so I have a body of work called Fauna's Adventures, and it kind of, well, first of all, Fauna is my first guide dog. After I lost my sight, I waited 17 years, and I was the typical resistant person who has lost their sight. I didn't want to use my cane. I was, I could walk by myself. I could see just fine. And all of the abrasions, broken toes, and scars on my legs will prove that I was not able to do that properly. So, in 2017, early 2017, my family had an intervention. They sat me down at the table, and I have twin boys, and the twin boys and the wife said, "It's time, Dad," and we're having an intervention. And I'm like, "Oh no, what did I do?" And they said, you have stumbled through life long enough. It's time for you to put your name in for a guide dog. And they went through the whole, we know that you feel that somebody else out there needs it more than you do, but it's time to do that. So I put my name in the hat, and it took about 9 months. And she came to me through Guide Dogs for the Blind, which is an amazing organization. And it should also be mentioned that all of my photography, I don't actually sell my work. Anything that I do, I donate to auctions or something that will directly benefit Guide Dogs for the Blind or one of the other groups like Colorado Special Olympics, or mainly people who are vision impaired support type community or organizations, National Federation for the Blind, American Council for the Blind, and that sort of stuff. But anyway, so this came around that after getting my guide dog, it really kind of brought forward to my attention that there are a lot of people who are using dogs who are not legitimate guide dogs or good service animals, and bringing them to restaurants, bringing them into grocery stores and that sort of stuff. And they're all ill-trained and end up being just dogs that people couldn't, bear to leave at home. So I created a body of photographic work that was to promote the use of legitimate service animals in the travel and hospitality industry. And I've been very fortunate to work with United Airlines and Hilton Hotels, and as I said, the Colorado Special Olympics, just some really amazing organizations to kind of create this body of work. We also worked with Amtrak, and on our site Blind Travels, we've got some not only reviews but also kind of a longer story of traveling from Denver to California on Amtrak, 33 hours, and kind of our adventures there. So it's definitely something to take a look at. But yeah, this whole body of work is just really to promote the use of legitimate service animals. And I bring Fauna to different properties and work with people who are in a hospital or in the hospitality industry to help them understand how to interact with a guide dog, and that, it's okay to ignore the guide dog. You don't have to talk to the dogs, and they're amazing and they're cute, but they are doing a job to keep people safe. And it really is kind of an eye opener for a lot of the people that are involved in the travel industry to have a legitimate, well-trained service animal come into their property and experience how it is, rather than the kind of the biting little tiny Maltese that people bring in and say it's an emotional support dog. And not to diss emotional support dogs, but a lot of them are kind of using that moniker because they just can't be left at home. So it's a body of work that is meant to promote that.
The work that you're doing is really amazing. Just to be working in several different areas, both artistically and, as a speaker and, I guess we could say, an activist for, you know, uh, I believe some of the work that you do is for tougher legislation regarding support animals and service animals.
Very much so.
Um,
A lot of the work that the National Federation for the Blind is very much part of that, and I try to be as active as I can in my free time, which unfortunately these days is not not. Maybe once this year's over, I'll be able to do more of that.
yeah, but for someone that's doing so much, it just really impressed me and impressed everyone at West 3D, which is why we are going to make sure that you have all the filament that you need to do your tactile work. We'll continue to work together on an ongoing basis
Thank you
and
very
make
much.
sure that
I really appreciate that.
you are very welcome, because it's something to see someone not only doing something original and artistic, but developing processes and working to try and make those processes available to increase accessibility for visual arts to people that couldn't enjoy them. That's amazing. And why wouldn't we want to help you with that? So we're really pleased to start this relationship with you and see where we go in the future.
I'm looking
So
forward to it too.
So thanks again for taking some time to talk about your work. I will make sure that we've got links to everything in the description so that people can find your websites and where your work's being shown. And we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for having me.